There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. And I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. Once more with love. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. It's good to be with you again. My name is Reverend Forrest Gilmore, as you heard earlier, and just as a little bit of background for those of you who don't remember me from the last time or the time before that, I'm the community minister in our church in Bloomington, and I'm also the executive director of an organization called Beacon in Bloomington, which is a homeless and housing provider working regularly with people experiencing extreme poverty, especially hunger and homelessness. And I wanted to, before getting into this sermon, I wanted to read to you the reading one more time, the Small Kindnesses reading, because sometimes I think poems just once isn't enough. You know, there's an opportunity to hear it again that can help us take it in all the more. Small kindnesses. I've been thinking about the way when you walk down a crowded aisle, people pull in their legs to let you by. Or how strangers will say, "Bless you," when someone sneezes, a leftover from the bubonic plague. Don't die, we are saying. And sometimes when you spill lemons from your grocery bag, someone else will help you pick them up. Mostly, we don't want to harm each other. We want to be handed our cup of coffee hot and to say thank you to the person handing it, to smile at them and for them to smile back, for the waitress to call us honey when she sets down the bowl of clam chowder, and for the driver in the red pickup truck to let us pass. We have so little of each other now, so far from tribe and fire. Only these brief moments of exchange. What if they are the true dwellings of the holy? These fleeting temples we make together when we say, "Here, have my seat. Go ahead. You first. I like your hat." A few months back, we had a client die. He was shot, murdered. We'd known him for a long time. Homeless, Are we there? Yeah, we're back. All right. So we'd known him for a long time. He was homeless and eventually housed. He lost his housing. He was housed again. He's a really sweet kid. We have this beautiful photo of him in a rich purple button-up shirt with his black bow tie perched at the top. He struggled with pretty severe intellectual disabilities, foster kid, and God knows what awfulness he survived before then. He unfortunately got connected with the wrong crowd with meth, dead, and his killer on the run. Such a loss, far too young. Deaths like that, hit other people like this. They hit other people experiencing homelessness pretty hard. There's a network of connections amongst those who are homeless, who spend, more than a few months out on the street. And often they are each the only community they have to each other. So when someone in that network dies, they grieve. I was walking out of our center, our day center, the other day, long after, we walked out of the day center right around when this happened, long after we had closed. And there was a young woman sitting at one of our tables there. And she looked a bit familiar to me, but I didn't really know her. But she did recognize me and call me by name, and she mentioned the death of this person and asked if I knew him. And of course I said yes. And she said, this place is what holds it all together. This is where we're safe. And I thought, what a precious thing safety must be to a person so often immersed in danger. Love is the word. I spent some time with another one of our clients who also happens to be transgender. And being transgender and being homeless, you've got to be one of the bravest people on earth to navigate all of that. And I offered her a ride to our overnight shelter, and she had been staying there after trying to stay at number of other shelters in the area, but all that were quite unsafe for her. And she was hauling 2 white trash bags filled with clothes that one of my staff members had collected for her. My staff member, this person she was tall, and one of my staff members had a friend who was also quite tall and had a number of dresses that she could donate to fit our client. And another staff member got her some makeup. And as we drove over to the shelter, I asked her how everyone was treating her, and she told me she was being treated very well. And I just felt this huge wave of gratitude, both to be in her presence, because this was an amazing and is an amazing human being, but also to be part of a place and a people that helped her feel safe and welcome and warm. It all felt like this extraordinary privilege in the best sense of that word. Love is the word. I was talking to another woman in our shelter, and gosh, does this woman have so many struggles. Pretty bedraggled, street homeless, severe addiction struggles, and God knows what else. She was telling me she was thinking about killing herself as she sorted through some clothes. And she mentioned how she'd been off drugs for a few days and how it was really hard and she was struggling with that. And after listening a bit, I said to her, I want you to know something. Your life matters to me. I need you to survive. I don't know exactly how we got there, but at some point I mentioned a children's book that had been on my mind, Everybody Needs a Rock, by Bird Baylor. And she started to tell me how much she loved rocks. And she began to show me her rock collection. She had all these mostly palm-sized stones that she carried around in her backpack, beautiful colors and shapes, crystals, geodes. And here was this person living without a home, weighing herself down with all these rocks in her backpack. And yet she clearly loved every single one. I repeated the book title to her, Everybody Needs a Rock, and encouraged her to maybe give some rocks to others wanting to give her some source of meaning, some opportunity to feel more than sorrow. And I called her the Rock Lady. A few days later, she came back to me and ever so proudly told me she had been sober for 10 days. She was smiling so wide you could see some of the strain had washed off her face as she rated this very simple joy. Love is the word. Back in the earlies, when I was fresh out of seminary, I served my first church as the associate minister for lifespan learning at the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Monterey Peninsula. And as part of that work, I served as the co-advisor of the youth group there and met with our teens every Sunday evening. And it was a sweet time, and this was a very special group of young people. And I don't know how it evolved, but somehow we developed a catchphrase. Love is the word. And that phrase was real for us. It was something we embodied for each other as we created a nourishing container for these young people's lives each together. And I've stayed in touch with a few of them over the years through social media, even met up with one a few years ago when I visited San Francisco. And I just received a message a bit ago that two of them, who had been best friends back in the day but never in a relationship, had circled back to find each other decades later and are getting married. And they asked me to be the officiant. I first saw their announcement on Facebook, and I wrote in the comments, "It's about time." Love is the word. I don't know how to convey the beauty of that circle and being invited back into that connection. There's nothing like witnessing people's lives through the years. Love is the word. You know, I think we've all been carrying a heavy load. Maybe that's always true, sometimes more than others, and some people more than others, but we've all been wearing heavy backpacks. The pandemic, of course, a more than 2-year event that built into its very nature a need for us to be afraid of each other. Not that that was wrong. We needed to distance and to protect ourselves, but to be in a 2-year experience where we had to be afraid of each other, the impact of that, the challenge of that. And in the midst of that, of course, and before, we've gone through some extraordinary political polarization, filled with vitriol, uprisings, death threats, and so much more. And there's, you know, even this, there's creeping climate change prickling at the back of our necks. And of course, the recent legal violation of women's bodily autonomy with who knows what's more to come. These are heavy weights. These are heavy stones. These times give added depth to the age-old curse disguised as a blessing. May you live in interesting times. And in the midst of all of this, in the midst of all this challenge and struggle and hardship, love can seem maybe trite. What can love possibly do in the face of all of this? And the truth is, and this is I think a hard truth, but the truth is what love can do in the face of all of this is nothing. And I say that because, not because love doesn't have its influence, but because love is not a controlling force. And sometimes we wish it would be. But love is not a controlling force. It doesn't make anything happen. Love is an influential power. Its magic is in its slow, gentle transformation of the human heart. And here's the thing, I believe in that power. I believe it is far harder to come by. It is constantly overwhelmed by shame or threat or despair or rage or pride or even exhaustion. It's easy to set love aside, to not trust it, to not believe in it. And truthfully, over the last several years, that's what I did. The last several years, I let both rage and loss overwhelm me. Rage at the state of our politics, and loss from the weight of the pandemic. Overwhelmed by stress and fear, I forgot about the simple blessings and extraordinary power of joy and kindness and gratitude and love. I recently started seeing a trauma therapist, somebody who specifically works on helping people through the experiences of trauma. And we did something called EMDR, which some of you may be familiar with. It's a rapid eye movement technique, which is particularly known to be effective with trauma and helping heal trauma in a way that talk therapy doesn't quite get at, that this gets at it at a deeper level. And as I worked through my struggles, I realized something. I realized something about the work I do on a day-to-day basis with people experiencing homelessness. As I worked through that, I realized that I absolutely love that work. I absolutely love working with people who are struggling in the experience of poverty and homelessness. And I experience it as an extraordinary privilege, just an incredible privilege, a gift to offer some semblance of hope to people who have been beaten up by the world, and to be honored by witnessing people's lives through the years, even unto death. And I also realized that the hardship of it all was getting the better of me, that the pain and the loss and death was overwhelming my gratitude. And I knew that to stay in this work, that somehow I had to find a way to hold both things, to the love and the loss, and to actually come to the realization or the awakening or the fundamental truth that the loss, the love, is what makes the loss bearable. The love is what helps us heal and grow and recover and sustain and nourish and care. Love is the word. Love is a word that we so often shy away from. It's too personal, or it's too cliche, or it's too romanticized, or it's too whatever. But what if love is exactly what we need, but consciously or unconsciously, sometimes at least, refuse to give ourselves? Perhaps we're too afraid. too angry, or too tired, or too lost. I had a mentor many years ago tell me, the elder, the wisdom keeper, the elder, emerges when the adult embraces the child. The elder emerges when the adult embraces the child. And I envisioned, as he talked about that story, I have this image of an adult holding the hand of a child. And just that moment of that embrace is when the elder, the wisdom keeper, arises. And I don't know, you may relate to this, but I sometimes catch myself being a pretty harsh judge of my former me. Harsher and more judgmental than I'd ever be to someone else or someone else would be to me. And I find myself softening now as I look back on my past with more forgiveness and understanding and compassion, offering the embrace to that child and also adult that wasn't ever offered to me, offering that embrace that wasn't ever offered to me, offering it now. You know, we talk about self-care a lot as a culture. What if love is the self-care we actually need? What if love is the societal care we actually need? What if that little youth group had it right? Love is the word. Love is the word. Love is the word. Maybe it begins with something as simple as, I like your hat. There is more love right here. Right here. There is more love right here. And I'm gonna keep on, 'cause I found it. 'Cause I found it. There is more love right